Let's begin by me first telling you why we are touching upon the topic that we are going to be addressing today. So most of you must have attended so far, जितने मैं आज attendees देख रही हूँ, सबने कम से कम 3-4 क्लासेस तो प्राणायाम की अभी तक अटेंड कर ही ली है. किसी ने 1-2 कम की होंगी, किसी ने उससे थोड़ी ज्यादा ही की होंगी. Now, based on some of you have turned up week after week, hardly missing any class. And every time you log into this class, and sometimes there is some concept that is being explained, sometimes there is practice time, sometimes there is only a practice class, जहाँ पे कुछ नया नहीं होता है, जो पहले किया है उसको प्रैक्टिस किया जाता है. तो आपके खुद का एक एक्सपीरियंस होता होगा. किसी दिन क्लास में मन लगता है, किसी दिन क्लास में मन नहीं लगता है. Sometimes your focus is better, sometimes your energy is not so good, Now those things you realize, we don't really talk about that very often, but those are things that we are aware of. Basically, we are aware कि हमने आज जो किया है वो कितना on the point था, कितना wavering था. We are aware of that generally. All right. And usually we end the pranayam class by, at least I end the pranayam class by telling you that take a few minutes, even after the class ends. 1 minute 30 सेकेंड जितना भी टाइम आपके पास है, आप थोड़ी देर बैठिए. फिर जब आपको आंखें खोलनी and go about your day, you do that. Okay. So that is the way we utilize time for Swadhyay. The reason we are touching upon something very powerful today from the Yoga Sutras, from the science that yoga is because हमको जो भी thoughts आते हैं, दिन में हमको approximately 60,000 thoughts आते हैं. और हर एक thought जो है, it is a vibration, it is an energy, it has its own energy. Correct? So if you watch a comedy movie, there is a certain level of emotion that is generated inside you. If you watch a tragedy, then there is a certain different emotion and energy and vibration that is generated within us. So every thought has its own energy, it has its own potency, and it affects the way we operate. The way we operate within our own minds, the way we operate within our own house, within our offices, within the society as large. It affects us and it influences our behavior. Okay, so now the reason we are talking about something called Pratipaksha Bhavna today, it is a concept, a very powerful concept from Yoga Sutra, जिसके बारे में आज हम समझेंगे थोड़ा डिटेल में. The reason we are talking about that today is because, like we've covered in the previous sessions, yoga is basically Ashtang Yoga. Ashta means 8. So there are 8 limbs. Ang means limbs. So there are 8 limbs of yoga per se. जिसका जो पहला लिम्ब होता है वो होता है यमा, और जो आखिरी होता है वो होता है समाधि. So we've discussed this ample number of times that the goal of yoga or the science of yoga is not that everybody should be able to do a chakrasana or a shirshasana or some advanced pose. That is not the goal. That is one limb. Why? To keep the body healthy. Because only if the body is healthy, then the mind can be stable. Yoga is all about steadiness and stability. That is what yoga is about. Because only after you reach one stage, then another, one limb after another, then you can reach the stage of samadhi. Okay, maybe someday we'll devote time to each of the limbs. We'll keep that for a later class. But samadhi is when, when a person is not affected by anything, good, bad, ugly. Kisi cheez se farak nahi padta hai, that is the state of samadhi. So the concept of Pratipaksha Bhavna is extremely important, and I will tell you what the sutra is. There are 4 words and we'll dwell upon that. The 4 words are Vitarka Badhana, Pratipaksha Bhavna. Okay, now let's break up the first word first. Vitarka. When we talk about Tark, in yoga there is something called Tarka Shastra. Not just yoga, there is a shastra called Tarka Shastra. जब आप किसी से बात करते हैं तो आप लॉजिकली बात करते हैं. तर्क का वेरी लूज ट्रांसलेशन, इंग्लिश इज अ वेरी पुअर लैंग्वेज. तर्क का लूज ट्रांसलेशन वुड बी लॉजिक और रीजनिंग. Okay, so you look at a situation, you analyze it, and then you say something based on your understanding and your analysis of the situation. You just don't talk ऐसे ही हवा में. Okay, that is called तर्क का इस्तेमाल करना. So the first word here is vitarka. Vitarka मतलब then illogical, unreasonable, okay, baseless. that is vitarka. Vitarka badhana. तो जब हमको डिस्टर्बिंग थॉट्स आते हैं या नेगेटिव थॉट्स आते हैं या इलॉजिकल या अनरीजनेबल थॉट्स आते हैं, तो ये हमको डिस्टर्ब करते हैं, करेक्ट? हमको तभी अवेयरनेस हो या ना हो, लेकिन वो हमको डिस्टर्ब करते हैं. सो वितर्क बाधना, तो बाधना इज ऑल्सो ब्रोकन इनटू टू. तो the whole thing is Vitarka Badhana Pratipaksha Bhavna. Before we go to Pratipaksha Bhavna, what it means is that by practicing Pratipaksha Bhavna, you can drive away the illogical or unreasonable or disturbing thoughts. तो वितर्क जो disturbing thoughts है या illogical unreasonable thinking है, उसको अगर आपको दूर करना है तो आपको प्रतिपक्ष भावना का अभ्यास करना चाहिए. Now we come to Pratipaksha Bhavna. प्रतिपक्ष का दूसरा सिनोनिम है विपरीत. You know, we do one pose, विपरीत करनी, where we lie down with the legs sticking to the wall. So it is a half inverted pose. विपरीत करनी, विपरीत means opposite. So what it means is कि जब आपको negative thoughts आए, जब आपको unreasonable thoughts आए, illogical चीजें आप सोचे, where you're not really analyzing the situation and just, you know, getting flown away or rather getting drawn into that line of thinking, you practice pratipaksh. So you cultivate. Bhavnam also means cultivate, or you nurture a line of thinking where you are creating a very powerful counter force. तो आपको नेगेटिव थॉट आया या कुछ ऐसा आया जो आपको डिस्टर्ब कर रहा है, अब या तो वो चलता रहे और आप डिस्टर्ब होते रहे. That is one thing. Another thing is that you choose the path where you create thoughts, where you look deep into the situation, where you sift beyond the surface and you project a counter force. जैसे हम लोग मूवीज में बहुत ड्रामेटिकली दिखाते हैं ना कि कोर्ट का सीन होगा तो एक लॉयर अपना आर्ग्यूमेंट देगा, यू नो, वो क्या बोलते हैं, पब्लिक प्रोसिक्यूटर एंड डिफेंस. तो वो लोग एक दूसरे को आर्ग्यूमेंट देंगे, ऐसे प्रेजेंट करेंगे, सो दे कैन प्रेजेंट द केस इन अ मोर पावरफुल इम्पैक्टफुल मैनर. That is exactly what it is. Like in the head, you can visualize it like that. That if I'm getting thoughts that are disturbing me, that are disturbing my peace of mind, that are hampering my creativity, my productivity, my relationships, then how do I start thinking in a way that I can present a counter force that inspires me, that helps me to tide over that situation in a way that it protects me also, it protects my relationships also. Okay, so we will come back to this, but this is what it means. Vitarka Badhane Pratipaksha Bhavna. So the reason why yoga emphasizes on this a lot is because according to yogic philosophy, जो negative thoughts होते हैं ना, वो हमारे यम और नियम को follow करने में बाधा create करते हैं. They are obstacles in the path. So like I said, we will dwell upon yam and niyam sometime. But to give you just one example of each, the first yam is satya, okay, truthfulness. तो सबसे पहले अगर हम लोग अनफॉर्चुनेटली हम लोग का जो एक्सपोजर होता है या जो अंडरस्टैंडिंग होती है योगा से, वो एक योगा क्लास से होती है, और क्लास में टिपिकली आसन प्रैक्टिस होती है. तो मेरे क्लास में भी वही होता है, एज यू नो. तो हमको लगता है कि दैट इज योगा. You know, there was a very interesting poem in school, Six Blind Men and the Elephant. I don't know if you all had it, if you remember it, but I have a very beautiful, there's a very easily available video on internet on it. So there are 6 blind men and each one goes to, they want to know what an elephant looks like, but they are blind, right? So they go and touch the animal. So someone touches the trunk and he thinks that the animal is like a rope or something. Someone touches the whole body and the elephant is huge, obviously. So that person thinks elephant is like a wall. Somebody touches the tusk and he thinks the elephant is like a sphere. So based on their limited exposure, they think this is what an elephant is, but the elephant is anything but that. It is a sum total of all that and so much more. Correct? So योगा में अगर हम उसको as a subject पढ़े ना, तो शुरुआत यम से होती है, where then you understand that asana is a very small aspect of yoga. So yam, like I said, I'll give you one example. The first yam is satya. So we are expected to be truthful. As a yoga practitioner, we are expected to be truthful. We are not necessarily expected to know every asana there is on Instagram, but we are expected to be truthful. So that is one example of yam. One example of niyam is swadhyay or self-study. So we are expected to introspect from time to time as a yoga practitioner. है ना, जैसे कोई स्टूडेंट होता है किसी भी कोर्स में पढ़ाई कर रहा हो तो इससे एक्सपेक्टेशन होती है कि वो मिनिमम पासिंग मार्क्स लाए ना, वैसे हमसे एज योगा प्रैक्टिशनर एक्सपेक्टेशन होती है कि हम यम और नियम को फॉलो करें. प्रतिपक्ष भावना को क्यों एम्फसाइज किया जाता है? क्योंकि वो हमारे यम और नियम के पालन करने में ही अड़चन पैदा करते हैं, नेगेटिव थॉट्स. दैट इज व्हाई nobody is saying that you will not have or you cannot have negative thoughts. What they are telling you is that here is a way in which you can handle them, you can transform them. The key word here is transform. So we'll come to how to transform that. Okay, now the very fascinating part is, this is something one of my teachers at Kevalya Dham had said, that Patanjali was actually a psychologist, you know. मतलब तभी ये थेरेपी वगैरह नहीं होती थी, वैसे फॉर्मली नहीं होती थी. जैसे हम लोग मॉडर्न साइकोथेरेपी हम सोचते हैं कि देयर बी अ काउंसलर सिटिंग अक्रॉस अ टेबल, वी विल नरेट अ लाइफ स्टोरी, ऑल ऑफ दैट. तो उस सेटिंग में तब थेरेपी नहीं होती थी, बट वी ऑलवेज हैड द गुरु शिष्य परंपरा, you know, where the shishya would stay with the guru for so long, literally grow up there, you know, in the ashram or whatever. So these concepts have been in use since then. Okay, तो काउंसलिंग या साइकोलॉजी की जुबान में इसको कहा जाता है कॉग्निटिव रीफ्रेमिंग और रीअप्रेजल. There is a beautiful branch of science called NLP, Neuro Linguistic Programming. If you ever get an opportunity, forget about ever, seize an opportunity to undergo a course in NLP. Some people run a 3-day course, 5-day course, whatever. It is worth it. I have studied bits of it and I can't tell you how helpful it is. So the point that I'm trying to make is that apart from yoga, modern science identifies a lot of concepts. Okay, so not that yoga needs validation, but I'm just telling you कि ये चीजें साइकोलॉजी में भी इस्तेमाल की जाती हैं, थेरेपी में भी इस्तेमाल की जाती हैं. तो इस्तेमाल की जाती है because they are effective. How you implement it, how you I think the critical thing is to learn it right. You know, like every class, every yoga class or asana class will teach you Surya Namaskar. The point is how rightly you learn it and then how you practice it. Correct? So the transfer of skill has to happen. तो काउंसलिंग में इसको ऐसा कहा जाता है. Now before we go further into this very powerful tool, here is something that we should all remember. I like the phrase गांठ बांध लेना. You know, तो आप इसको एकदम से समझ के you internalize it very strongly, that Pratipaksha Bhavna is not about suppressing or avoiding something. Okay, and I'm going to explain this or rather elaborate on this with examples. It is about changing one's outlook. Okay, I'm going to repeat that. Pratipaksha Bhavna or cognitive reframing or reappraisal is not about suppressing the reality or the truth or about avoiding the truth. It is about transforming or changing one's outlook towards the situation. All right. So now let us start with an example. Okay, I love examples from movies because they are so relatable. Has everybody seen Munna Bhai MBBS? Just put up your hands if you've seen it. Okay, if somebody is not seen it, I'm still hoping कि आपने थोड़ा ट्रेलर देखा होगा तो आपको थोड़ा आइडिया होगा. तो Baman Irani's character in the movie, you know, he plays this dean of this university, and उसका एक trait रहता है कि उसको जब भी गुस्सा आता है ना तो वो हंसने लगता है. You remember that? Whenever he is like really infuriated, so just to maintain his calm, he bursts out into laughter. जैसे वो laughter club वाले हम देखते हैं ना, तो he bursts out into laughter. But there is a difference. Laughter club वाले गुस्से को दबाने के लिए या camouflage करने के लिए नहीं करते हैं. वो करते हैं क्योंकि उनको पता है कि इसके benefits हैं और सब कर रहे हैं. There is a sense of community, there's enjoyment. Now this example is a very poor example of Pratipaksha Bhavna. Why? Because his outlook to the situation is not changing. Typically, he's infuriated every time, you know, Munna Bhai's character or Sanjay Dutt's character confronts him with something. Does it help him in the long run? Does it help Baman Zidani's character in the long run? It does not help. He laughs because उसको ना तभी गुस्से से पागल हो रहा है, तो वो पागल नहीं होना चाहते, इसके लिए वो तभी के लिए हंस लेता है. But it does not change his perception. Every time he sees Sanjay Dutt, every time he is furious. So it is not permanent, no? There is nothing that has changed. Let's not talk about permanence. It's a different concept. Yoga does not believe in permanence. But there is no change at the mind level. At the outlook, there is no change. कल भी उसके लिए वो संजय दत्त इरिटेबल था, आज भी इरिटेबल है, परसों भी इरिटेबल होगा, वैसी सिचुएशन है. Okay? So that is a very poor example of Pratipaksha Bhavna. Now I'm going to give you a very solid example of Pratipaksha Bhavna. Please tell me you've seen the movie Chak De India. And if you've not seen it, then it's your homework, okay? All right. So if some people have not seen the movie, it is okay. I'll share that scene with you from YouTube. So in the movie, Shah Rukh Khan plays this coach, okay? And he's coaching a team of hockey players, female hockey players. Now, suddenly, this team has been pitted against a team of boys. Now, hockey, as we know, at least in India, although it is the national game of the country, it does not have the exposure and the sponsorship and the training that some other sports may have. Usme bhi, even in India and the world over for that matter, if you look at athletes, if you look at sports persons, the female players are paid much lesser than the male counterparts. So what I'm trying to say is that there is a lot of gender related disparity. There's a lot of discrimination. Okay, so if you are a female athlete, you may be working just as hard, maybe even harder, but the odds are that still the male players or athletes will get more limelight, more support, more sponsorship, everything more as compared to you because you are a woman. Now, this is the environment and this is the constant messaging that the female players receive, that you are not good enough. In one line, you are not good enough. Now, suddenly kya hota hai ki Shah Rukh Khan is working very hard, his team is training very hard to go to the World Cup. But World Cup mein ya to males ki team ja sakti hai, ya to females ki team jati hai, because the country will not sponsor. Itna paisa nahi hai boss, we can only send one team. So obviously the odds are against the women's team. So suddenly the board decides that, okay, let's have a match between the men and the women's team and then see whoever wins the match goes to the World Cup. So now the girls know that they are going to get thrashed on the court because they said कि हम तो मतलब हमने कभी खेला ही नहीं है उनके सामने, उनका इतना साल का experience है. So the defeat is already registered in the mind. And there's this very powerful scene in the movie where Shah Rukh Khan tells them that, you know, this match is not a women versus men's match. This is your opportunity to show to the world that just because you are a woman does not mean that you should only be in the kitchen. This match is against every individual who put you down all your life, who did not believe in you, who said that you are not good enough, who said that you are a woman, so your only job is to get married, have children. Okay, so this match is not against those boys, those 16 boys on the court. This match is against the whole social system. So there he is trying to replace that thought that I am a failure with the thought that let me give this my best shot. And then jo bhi hoga wo dikha jayega. Okay, it's a very powerful scene and everybody should at least see that scene, if not that whole movie. That is a very good example of Pratipaksha Bhavna because it is such a strong counterforce. And that's why it is called reframing. Jaise hum koi sentence likhte hain, then we say, no, this is not reading right. Let me reframe that sentence. So here you are reframing your thought. You are reframing your perspective. That is why it is called reframing. Pratipaksh means also viparit, opposite. So when you have a thought like, I am not good enough, you try to counter it with something so powerful that, you know, it can take over that thought or it can nullify that thought. So far makes sense? Yeah. So that is what Pratipaksha Bhavna is. Now, Pratipaksha Bhavna is, of course, apart from having great implications for inspiring people, for motivating people, for helping them overcome tragedies, etc., by people, ourselves, you know, inspiring ourselves, gaining confidence, being better, etc. It is an excellent coping mechanism. Okay. So I was, before I'm supposed to take a class like this, I sleep on it and I let it churn in my mind, and then new things come to the surface. So I was just thinking this morning, maybe 15 minutes before class, that 20 years ago I was a very different person. So I am somebody who's quit jobs overnight. मतलब एक कंपनी में काम किया, 2-2.5 महीने किया, अच्छा नहीं लग रहा है यार, कल सुबह जाके रेजिग्नेशन दे दिया. And I've done that multiple times. Okay, not that I regret it, but now when I look back, I tell myself that the person that I am today would not do that. Okay, so I also thought this morning that I know some people who have told me कि 25th या 30th बर्थडे के बाद तो मेरी बर्थडेज मनाने की इच्छा ही खत्म हो गई. मतलब I just thought I'm getting so old now. So it's a matter of perception. But when I look at it, I said whatever I've gained in terms of insight, in terms of experience from being 20 to now 41, I would not give it away for anything in the world. Matlab, why would I want to go back to 20 and being the naive and inexperienced person that I was, so much more angry, so much more rebellious for no rhyme or reason, which you understand only in hindsight. Okay. So maybe then I thought that maybe I didn't have the coping mechanisms, I didn't know how to look at things. So coming to how it is a coping mechanism and why it is important to have coping mechanism. There's a beautiful story. There's a book by Jhumpa Lahiri. She actually came to be known into the limelight and on the literary scenes, I think, because of the book called The Interpreter of Maladies. So it's a collection of short stories, very few stories. And the title is on the last story in the book. Highly recommended. Okay. I love that story, and it explains reframing so beautifully. So कहानी ऐसी है कि there's this woman who's come from abroad, and all the stories I think are set in the colonial era, pre-independence time. So there is this British woman or whatever nationality. There's this woman who's come to India. She's married to an Indian, so she's visiting her husband's ancestral home, etc. So she obviously cannot speak Hindi. She can only speak English. तो वो एक टैक्सी लेके शी इज गोइंग टू सम प्लेस विद इन द विलेज और व्हाटएवर. तो वो टैक्सी वाले को पूछती है कि आप पूरा दिन यही करते हो क्या, है ना. शी इज जस्ट ट्राइंग टू स्ट्राइक अ कन्वर्सेशन एंड ही सेड कि नहीं, मैं दिन में ये करता हूँ, फिर शाम को ना देयर इज दिस डॉक्टर हियर. सो द डॉक्टर इज अ लोकल डॉक्टर, but that because that area is colonized, it has a lot of British officers who obviously cannot speak Hindi. And they don't have a resident British doctor yet. So if they are ill, they have to go to the local doctor only. But the local doctor cannot speak English, and the Britishers obviously cannot speak Hindi. Now, this taxi driver can speak and understand both. So what he does in the evenings during the consulting hours is he plays the interpreter. तो अगर कोई बीमार आदमी आता है, वो इसको बोलता है टैक्सी ड्राइवर को कि मुझे फॉर एग्जाम्पल पेट में दर्द है, तो वो उसको इंग्लिश में बोलेगा, फिर वो हिंदी में या जो भी लोकल लैंग्वेज है उसमें वो डॉक्टर को बोलेगा कि इसको पेट में दर्द. So he plays the interpreter. So when the taxi driver tells that lady that this is what I do in the evenings, he's very sad about it. He said, every day I'm just listening to sick people's stories. कोई बोलता है यहाँ पे दर्द है, कोई बोलता है ये है, कोई इसके लिए दुखी, कोई इसके लिए दुखी. It is such a, मतलब I am just waiting for an opportunity कि कब मुझे यहाँ से इस काम से मुझे छुटकारा मिले. I don't want to do this. I'm not happy doing this. And that woman says, it is such a marvelous thing. You are the interpreter of maladies. If you weren't there, then these people who are suffering for whatever reason, they would have no way of sending the point across to the doctor, and the doctor would have no way to practice his art and science and heal those people. You are doing such a fabulous and noble job. And in that moment, that taxi driver has that aha moment कि मैं जिस काम को इतना तुच्छ समझ रहा था, इतना डिप्रेसिंग समझ रहा था, एक्चुअली ये कितना सेवा वाला काम मैं कर रहा हूँ. It is helping people find a solution to their problems and bridging the gap between people. So he keeps playing that phrase in his mind. In that story, it is mentioned. He keeps thinking, I'm the interpreter of maladies. I'm the interpreter of maladies. Because of me, somebody is finding some relief in their life. Beautiful example of cognitive reframing of, now that becomes that man's coping mechanism. Now, when he goes every evening, how is he going to feel? Is he going to feel depressed? He's going to look forward to that time in the evening. You know, कि कौन आएगा, वो क्या बोलेगा, फिर उसको दवाई मिलेगी, फिर उसको ठीक हो जाएगा. Okay, good, I've done my job. The situation is the same. Nothing has changed. That is why it is very important to remember, it is not about suppressing or gliding over something or avoiding something. It is about looking at things from a different perspective. Okay, that is very important to remember. Otherwise, it's very tricky. One can go off balance, like Munna Bhai wala example. Okay, so when I was researching this subject, there are two things that I read. So I've written that down. I'm going to read that out to you as it is. Okay, power. When we are talking about power here, we are talking in context of Pratipaksha Bhavna or the power of Pratipaksha Bhavna. Power lies in knowing that one has the freedom to choose one's outlook. See, we feel extremely disturbed when we feel helpless, when we feel powerless, when we feel we do not have control over a situation. We may not have any of those things, but we still have the freedom to choose our outlook. Okay, thoda heavy hai, but there is a book by Viktor Frankl. Viktor Frankl, existentialism, founder of existentialism, logotherapy, has written a book called Man's Search for Meaning. And he wrote this book based on his experiences when he was a prisoner in a concentration camp during World War II. Viktor Frankl, being a Jew, was imprisoned. So very slim volume, very heavy book. Okay, so mauka lage ya ichha ho, so you can explore that. So the power lies in knowing that you can choose how you look at the situation and then you process it from a different way. Now, another thing that I want to read out to you is that this is also something that I read in the research. And it tells you why Pratipaksha Bhavna works. It says Pratipaksha Bhavna works because it reflects back to us what is true, deep and abiding. I'm going to repeat that. Pratipaksha Bhavna works because it reflects back to us what is true, deep, and abiding. It provides opportunities to transcend the need to always be in control and right. It provides opportunities to transcend the need to always be in control and right, rather than being in a productive relationship with truth. Okay, so बहुत deep है, दो sentence है पर बहुत deep है. We want to be in control, and nobody likes to be proven wrong unless they've reached a certain level of maturity. Okay, if you tell anybody directly you are wrong, it does not go down well. 9 out of 10 times it will not go down well. Worse if that person is your superior. I've had that problem since childhood because in school I would tell my teachers, ma'am, you are wrong. And invariably they would call my mother. तो मुझे लगता था यार इतना क्या बुरा मान गई, you know. So age gives you that perspective that egos are very delicate. Okay, and just because somebody is a teacher doesn't mean they've reached some Zen level. Anyway, so now in context of what I have just said, I'm going to give you one last example and then I will be quiet and hopefully some of you will talk. All right, so repeating what I said, it provides opportunities to transcend the need to always be in control. Now I'll give you this example. I know this family, husband, wife, and 2 children. Husband is 50, wife is 49, and the children, so to speak, I think one is 19 maybe. And so the younger one is a boy, the elder one is maybe early 20s. So ab inki situation aisi hai, the father, like any father, is a very hardworking man. Okay, to the extent that उनका काम भी demanding है और ऐसा है कि जिसकी वजह से जैसे बहुत आदमियों के साथ होता है, health gets neglected. But obviously work is work. His work is also his passion, so he is very happy with his work. But उसके कारण बहुत सारी चीजें वो sacrifice कर रहे हैं because obviously That is something he loves to do, and he also has to provide for the family. The woman is a housewife. Okay, so ये situation है, they're doing well for themselves. The daughter is pursuing medicine. She wanted to be a doctor. She was very clear, always very good at studies. Now, as it is in India at least, कि आप अपना पढ़ाई पूरी करते हो, फिर आपको 1 या 2 साल की कुछ internship या कुछ करनी पड़ती है. वो government का mandate है. There is no way you can escape that and then get your doctor's license. आपको license ही नहीं. Now the new rule is you don't get to choose where you will intern. So these are people from Mumbai. Always the children have always lived in Mumbai. Now the daughter is in a place called Sangli, which is like a very remote area. So it is nowhere close to Mumbai. It is a far cry from Mumbai. वो सब छोड़ो. So then because it is medicine, तो आपको बहुत पढ़ाई करनी होती है, बहुत टेस्ट होता है, बहुत rigorous schedule होता है, और वहाँ का खाना भी आपको नहीं जमता है. आप हॉस्टल में रहते हो, वहां पे ऐसा कुछ है ही नहीं कि आप हॉस्टल के अलावा कहीं रह सको. It is that kind of a place. So the mother told me recently that that day her daughter was crying because वो hostel के खाने में cockroach निकला. Like she was having a plate of poha and she found cockroach in it. So she was feeling very bad and she was crying over it. So she said we drove down over the weekend and I gave her a lot of things and मैं कुछ भी खाती हूँ. This is what struck with me. The mother said, मैं कुछ भी खाती हूँ ना तो मुझे लगता है कि मैं ये कैसे खाऊं. My daughter is not even getting hygienic food. Forget about things that she likes or delicious food. She's not even getting hygienic food. God knows what is happening with her. So the mother is disturbed. Okay, because the mother has no control. No, nobody has control. What will you do? Then they have another son also. No? So this is the daughter's story. Now we coming to the son. Son, after his 10th or whatever, suddenly decided that he wants to go abroad. Till then, there was no discussion in the house कि हम abroad जाएंगे. But मेरे friends जा रहे हैं, सब लोग जा रहे हैं, मेरा पूरा friend circle जा रहा है, तो मुझे भी abroad जाना है. So in very short time, it was decided that okay, this is what he wants to do. We will send him abroad. Okay, family has the means. So family told him, अगर अच्छा नहीं लगे ना तो वापस आ जाओ. If you don't like it there, because it was a very last minute decision, so they chose a university where पास में कोई तो family member है at some hours का distance. He went somewhere in the UK. So at some hours distance, they said if you don't like it or over the weekend you have your off, you don't want to stay in the dormitory, you go stay with them. At least थोड़ा change हो जाएगा. पर अच्छा नहीं लगे तो वापस आ जाओ. So they sent him. So in 6 months he was back. Now he was back. अभी यहाँ पे ऑब्वियसली वो एकेडमिक ईयर का आधा साल तो निकल गया बिकॉज 6 महीने आपने वहां पे डाल दिए. हियर इट इज नॉट काउंटेड, इट हैज नो मेरिट व्हाटएवर. सो नाउ there are obviously desperate efforts to get a fresh start, get an admission here, etc, etc. So now look at it from, if this mother looks at it a little objectively. She told me as recently as yesterday, इधर से भी टेंशन है, उधर से भी टेंशन है. What she meant was बेटे का भी टेंशन है और बेटी का भी टेंशन. Okay, so that is what she is processing day in and day out. Now, if she looks at it from the perspective of Pratipaksha Bhavna, the odds of the daughter developing a solid work ethic and developing the tools to deal with any situation, any pressure, any stressor in life are much higher. Much higher vis-a-vis the son who cried over a video call and he said मैं यहाँ पे नहीं रह सकता, and they told him take the next flight out. We are booking the next flight out for you. So in their map of the world is a phrase from NLP or neuro linguistic programming. Map of the world मतलब दुनिया का एक नक्शा है ना, हम सबको पता है. There is a globe, there is the world map. यहाँ पे ये देश है, यहाँ पे ये continent है, etc. But हमारा ना एक अपना map होता है. So this is not related to geography, this is related to perspective. So if that mother looks at it objectively, she'll realize that in showing love to our son, we have maybe set him up for failure. Could be, no? Because anytime he comes across a situation where he thinks, मैं ये नहीं कर सकता, I cannot cope with this, let me opt out. Because opting out is an option. Okay? Everybody does not have that option. There are many people who go abroad or go wherever, go to Sangli or whatever, places that nobody's heard of. They complete what they set out to complete and they came back. Okay, so the point is that if that mother thinks about it a little differently, it will serve as a coping mechanism for her. And if the children or if every individual understands these things, then they can also process things a little different. Okay, so ये ना हम लोग छोटी से छोटी चीज में हम अप्लाई कर सकते हैं. जैसे हम traffic is a very relatable example in Mumbai. So we never know where we will reach, when we will reach a particular place, because you can never predict traffic. Even though you have Google Maps, you cannot predict your reaching time. So then you find a coping ways. No, you either leave a little early, you carry a book, you listen to something. You find a way to spend that time in a way that you're not getting rattled or disturbed. Correct? So it is a coping mechanism. Pratipaksha Bhavna is a coping mechanism at a much more impactful level. Okay, so with that, I think I'm done with whatever I wanted to say. Now, the reason I asked you to put together that list was, तो एक तो ये था कि आप प्राणायाम क्लास में आते हैं, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate it, because Sunday की सुबह उठ के आना is not something that everybody would do, but most of you come, every class you come. Okay, so if you're coming, you should get your time's worth. It should do something good for you. It should be beneficial to you. Even if that benefit is in the 5 minutes of that 1 hour that you're carving out on Sunday morning, it should benefit you. तो अगर आप आ रहे हैं लेकिन आपको लग रहा है कि मेरा ध्यान फिर भी नहीं लग रहा है, then you have the opportunity to find out through स्वाध्याय कि आपका ध्यान कहाँ पे लग रहा है उस समय. अगर उस समय क्लास में नहीं लग रहा है तो उस समय आपका ध्यान कहाँ पे लग रहा है. Whether you are daydreaming, which can also be disturbing, because anything, basically anything that is taking you away from the present is misleading, no? Whether it is from the past, whether it is from the future, whether it is fantasy, whether it is an imaginary argument that you're having in your mind, it is taking away from the present. So it is what we call as Vitarka. Okay, it is not reasonable, it is not productive, it is not working in your favor. So then you can use Pratipaksha Bhavna. So I'm hoping you put that list together. So if anybody wants to share, of course we have the time. What I would say is, if you want to share something, whether it is about an incident or a person or a circumstance or situation that you are dealing with, or it is a person, a specific person. If you're choosing to share, we will stop the recording before that. But if you're choosing to share, don't share the person's name. You don't need to share your relationship with the person. If you don't want to talk about a person, even better, talk about a situation maybe or a circumstance. If you want to, there is absolutely no compulsion. Before I conclude and I throw this open to you, one last example. I really like Zig Ziglar's writings. I thought the man had such rich experience that you feel like when you read somebody's books or when you look at their videos, you listen to them, you feel that, you know, आपने उस समय में जितना आपने उस चीज को सुनने या पढ़ने में लगाया, you gained a wealth of experience. And for me, Zig Ziglar is one of those people who can give you a wealth of insight in whatever time you invest in listening to or exposing yourself to the man's experiences. So my favorite book from Zig Ziglar is See You at the Top. उसमें वो एक example share करता है where this woman comes up to him. He was a wonderful motivational speaker and a coach. So one woman comes up to him and she tells him that I hate my job. You know, it is so far and the boss is, so bossy and my colleagues suck and, you know, I am just not happy and I'm not growing and it's just horrible. Everything about my job is horrible. And Zig Ziglar hears her out and then he tells her, you may not know this, but I think they're going to fire you very soon. And she's really shocked. She's like, you know nothing about the place where I work. I didn't even tell you. How do you know they're planning to fire me? He said, you are so negative that they will not be able to tolerate you for that long. You know, it's a harsh statement coming from a motivational speaker. Then he asks her a few questions. He says, do they pay you? And she says, yes, they pay me. Do they pay you on time? She says, yes, they pay me on time. Does that money that you make from that salary help you in any way? She says, of course, it's very helpful. Does it help your family? Yes, it helps my family. He asked her a few more questions, which I don't remember now. He said, instead of focusing on everything that you don't like, Why don't you think about what that job does well for you? How does it help you? If you think about that, you will maybe start going to office with a smile on your face. Maybe that will change your interaction with your colleagues, with your boss, with the way you look at your work at large. That is Pratipaksha Bhavna in principle. Okay. So the reason I asked you to write down those things, I knew we would not have the time to look at everybody's sharing and, for you to process everything and implement. इसके implementation में बहुत time लगता है. Okay. So the goal of yoga behind emphasizing the practice of Pratipaksha Bhavna is to make it a default mechanism. जैसे हमारा default mechanism होता है ना कि अभी for example अपने हाथ से कुछ गिर गया तो अभी घर पे कोई डांटेगा. That is the first thought we have. Somebody is going to get upset. Chalo, that maybe I am the eldest in the family, so nobody can scold me. But somebody is going to get upset about it. Somebody is going to get disturbed about it. Okay, so वो अपना default line of thinking होता है. प्रतिपक्ष भावना के लिए इसलिए इस पे emphasize किया जाता है कि धीरे धीरे आप इससे पहले कि आपको negative thought आए ना, आप उसमें से जो आपके हित में है वो आपके समझ में आ जाए. Before you go into that spiral staircase of how this is torturing me or disturbing me, you start thinking, how is this helping me grow? That is the objective. Okay, so I'm going to stop recording now.